we all ready? Okay. To members of the press, thank you very much for waiting for the conclusion of the EGM and being here at the press conference. In terms of the turnout, the Bar Council is pleasantly surprised that we had 1,270 members of the Bar who have registered their attendance at this EGM. That number is higher than our last AGM in the month of March, where we had around 800 to 900 members. And I think this high turnout is a reflection with the seriousness with which members of the Malaysian Bar view the events that transpired on the 28th of April this year, related to the Bersih 3.0 rally. The fact that there was widespread reports of police brutality and excessive disproportionate use of tear gas and water cannon in KL, which only started after the alleged reported breach of the barricade in Dataran Merdeka in Kuala Lumpur after 3 p.m., prior to which there was a carnival-like atmosphere in KL. That incidents, compared to what transpired in 4 other states, where substantial numbers also turn out for Bersih 3.0, namely Kuantan, Johor Bahru, Malacca, Ipoh. Our monitoring team members who were in those 4 cities reported that the police facilitated and cooperated with the demonstrators in those places. Contrast that with what happened in Kuala Lumpur, which is most unfortunate. And before I take you through the final report, what this final report does is to actually put out there into the public debate what is the law when it comes to crowd control and management in Malaysia compared to other jurisdictions like the United States, Australia, Egypt, Philippines, and what lessons the police did not learn from the past 4 Suhakam inquiry reports into 4 separate incidents involving rallies. And what is most important, so far as use of force is concerned, are the principles of necessity and proportionality. I now very quickly highlight the final report. There are 10 separate observations in the final report based on a very detailed account, factual description of what the 80 strong members of the monitoring team observed on that day. Firstly, the rally was peaceful until around 3 p.m. when the police opened fire with their water cannons and tear gas. 2, the use of force by the police without any obvious provocation or cause was far worse, indiscriminate, disproportionate, and excessive compared to last year. Police brutality was more widespread. There was a concerted effort by the police to prevent and stop any recording of their actions and conduct, including members of the media. 5, the police fired tear gas directly at the crowd, and their firing pattern was to box in the participants rather than allowing them to disperse quickly. 6, after which there were pockets of retaliatory behavior exhibited by the participants of the rally to the wrongful use of the force by the police. 7, the police were observed taunting and mocking the crowd. 8, when items were thrown by some of the participants at the police stooped to return like for like. 9, the police personnel were not wearing and displaying their police identification number on the uniform. And 10, the team's estimate of the size of the crowd that day was that there was more than 100,000 people there. And if I can just quickly highlight some of the important principles when it comes to crowd management for law enforcement officers. If you look at the international instruments out there about the use of force and crowd management of law enforcement officials, there are really 3 important instruments. The United Nations Code of Conduct for Law Enforcement Officials, United Nations Basic Principles on the Use of Force and Firearms by Law Enforcement Officials, and the Amnesty International Guidelines. And I just very quickly highlight some of these. Article 3 of the Code of Conduct, law enforcement officials may use force only when strictly necessary and to the extent required for the performance of their duty, hence necessity and proportionality. Principle 4 of the United Nations Basic Principle on the Use of Force and Firearms says, law enforcement officials, in carrying out their duty, shall, as far as possible, apply non-violent means before resorting to the use of force and firearms. They may use force and firearms only if other means remain ineffective or without any promise of achieving the intended result. Principle 5, whenever lawful use of force and firearms is unavoidable, law enforcement officials shall A, exercise restraint in such use and act in proportion to the seriousness of the offense and the legitimate objective to be achieved. B, minimize damage and injury and respect and preserve human life. And when you compare what happened in KL, all right, in KL on that day, incidents of when there was a reported breach of the barricade in Dataran Merdeka, what the police did, instead of isolating that area and dealing with the protesters in that area, instead they then launched tear gas and water cannon throughout all the other areas where there were peaceful demonstration or peaceful rally. There was no adequate warning given as to the use of water cannon and tear gas. There were, of course, some instances where warning was given, but none of which complied with what is called the 5 stages of crowd management, which Zulkfley inquiry in the past has recommended. The most important first stage is what is called verbal persuasion. There has to be engagement by the police with the participants of rallies to say, we now want you to disperse. Please disperse. And of course, there is also to be a liaison officer on the part of the demonstrators. More about that a bit later. But that is your first stage. In all the accounts by our members of the monitoring team, there was no first stage engagement of verbal persuasion. Secondly, in terms of warning for the use of water cannon and tear gas, Zulkfley had recommended there ought to be 10 minutes interval of 3 rounds of warning. That also was not complied with. What happened in some instances, there were only 2 minutes interval of warning, if at all there was warning. Then there was what is described as boxing in the demonstrators. When you use non-lethal force to disperse, by its very nature, it must mean that there must be exit route for the demonstrators, 1. 2, you must also take into account if there's a large gathering of people to give them sufficient time to disperse. These 2 considerations were not taken into account at all by the police in their use of tear gas and water cannon. There was no adequate consideration as to exit nor time for dispersal. Instead, tear gas and water cannon were fired into the middle of the crowd without giving them sufficient time. Our video link, which is referred to in our report, contains footage of video taken by members of our monitoring team. We did not plug them or get them out there from a public domain. This is actually from our monitoring team, and in the clip of Jalan Tun Perak, you can see there, people were packed body to body along Jalan Tun Perak, but yet there was insufficient time given and warning for them to disperse. Instead, volleys of tear gas were fired into the middle of the crowd, one after the other. Compare it to what Zulkfley had recommended and to the other jurisdictions which I have highlighted in the final report. There's a huge contrast. And all this begs this simple question. Why has the police not read and implemented the recommendations and findings of Zulkfley inquiry? Kesas Highway, which incident, the report was 2001. We then have KLCC 2006. We then had Bandar Mahkota Ceras 2009. And last year, we had Bersih. The report only came out recently. So these are guidelines and policies which the police ought to have implemented. So why was it the police in Kuantan, Johor Bahru, Ipoh exercised great restraint and facilitated a peaceful demonstration, but the police in KL did not do so. Then, equally troubling is the denial of access. We had a team of urgent arrest lawyers at Pulapol, station at Pulapol, from 5 p.m. right up to 5:30 a.m. They were denied access to the detainees, and instead a few members of the media and 2 Suhakam commissioners were allowed access inside. But yet they were denied their constitutional right of consulting a lawyer of choice. That did not happen. The Vice President and myself, together with a few of the lawyers, actually contacted the police, a senior ranking officer, and said, why isn't this happening? The only reason we were given is because these arrested persons were being processed to be released. Whilst that might be the case, there still has to be access to lawyers, A, to ascertain that their physical well-being, whether they have been harmed either during the rally, during arrest, or in detention. B, of course, to give legal advice prior to any statement being recorded from them. This is their constitutionally guaranteed right. During the extraordinary general meeting, there was a robust debate. Some members asked questions about the final report and also the motion, but at the end of the day, I gave the figure. Overwhelming majority supported the resolution. And we had 2 members of the bar who came forward and shared with us their experience as being victims of police brutality. And another did so via another member of the bar. The third member of the bar then related the third victim's experience of police brutality. Oisin, is the resolution ready? Oh, it's okay. Then, the bar, members of the bar also requested that the president of the bar highlight to the media today that, that the arrest, assault, and confiscation of the equipment and device of the media are condemned by the police, are condemned by the bar, must never happen. And on the issue of confiscation of equipment of the media and even members of the public, again, the Suhakam inquiry report in the past has condemned that, but yet it has happened. Second of which is the censorship. It is most unfortunate that the mainstream media, I'm confident through no fault of anyone here, has not given a balanced reporting. So that is most unfortunate. Okay. We also want to acknowledge the good policing in the other 4 cities, in contrast to the bad policing in KL.
Soft copy to read out any
Yes.
part at this point?
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. The hard copy is on its way.
Do you want to see 12 in particular?
Yeah, it's okay. I'll do it myself. If I can just highlight some of the key resolution. The Malaysian Bar views with grave concern and condemns the excessive, indiscriminate and wrongful use of water cannons and tear gas by the police on participants of the assembly, the action of the police in not allowing the crowd sufficient time to disperse in an orderly and safe manner and instead chasing the participants and attacking them by persistently shooting water cannon and tear gas on them. Again, a point made in past Suhakam inquiries, the tactics of the police in trapping and attacking the participants with water cannon and tear gas instead of permitting them to disperse. Then, the Malaysian Bar renews our call on the government to give effect to the recommendation of the Royal Commission to enhance the operation and management of the Royal Malaysia Police to set up the Independent Police Complaints and Misconduct Commission recommended therein without further delay. And this is premised on past experience and the very simple principle that the police are unable to police themselves, and you need an independent oversight body with adequate investigative powers and disciplinary powers to have oversight of the police. The Malaysian Bar calls for the Minister of Home Affairs and the Inspector General of Police to issue a public apology for the actions and conduct of the police, including the excessive, indiscriminate and wrongful use of water cannons and tear gas. The Malaysian Bar calls for the Minister of Home Affairs and the Inspector General of Police to issue a public apology to members of the public, media professionals and lawyers who were assaulted or bitten by the police. The Malaysian Bar calls for the setting up of an independent commission to recommend and formulate proper guidelines or operating procedures governing conduct of police in the control and management of public assemblies and the use of non-lethal and lethal weapons. And then the Malaysian Bar calls on the government, in line with the Medellin Declaration, to A, prevent crimes against media professionals, investigate and penalize such crimes, B, promote awareness and train Malaysian law enforcement agencies to respect and promote the safety of media professionals, C, take resolute action for the safety of media professionals and ensure respect for their professional independence. And the last item, I've skipped some of them, paragraph 12, the Malaysian Bar reaffirms the right to individuals to participate in public assemblies. The Malaysian Bar is, however, concerned by and does not countenance any acts of violence in a public rally. Such action by participants is not an appropriate response to the police. Such right of public assembly must be exercised in a peaceful and responsible manner. The Malaysian Bar reminds organizers of public assemblies of their responsibility to take all reasonable action to ensure a peaceful assembly. The Malaysian Bar is equally concerned by reports that certain persons had crossed through the police parameter barriers at the relevant location when the state organizers had at about 2:35 p.m. called for a dispersal of the assembly. Okay. Pending the hard copy resolution being distributed, can I invite questions from the press? Yi Liang?
All right. Basically, these are the same resolutions that you said that you're going to discuss with the bar at the release of the interim report, right? These are basically the same findings as that.
Yes, with some amendments.
So what next for the bar? Now they've broached it to the members. What next for the bar council?
All right. First of which, of course, is number one, engagement with the authorities. The bar intends to engage the Inspector General of Police, the Attorney General, the Home Affairs Minister, the Prime Minister, and Sohakam with this final report, and we will extend full cooperation to these officers. Second of which, I forgot to read it from the resolution, the bar will call for volunteers from amongst its members to come forward and to assist victims on that day.
So we are looking at civil litigation.
Yes, that is certainly an option. We will provide advice to these victims, and of course, ultimately, it's up to the clients to decide which route, if at all, they want to take action.
How can these clients approach, the potential clients approach the bar?
Oh, we will be putting up circulars and announcements, if not public advertisements.
Just to confirm,
Clara?
yeah, how many members of the bar voted against this?
1-6. 1-6.
Voted for?
939. Yes, 939 in favor, 16 against, 0 abstention. 1-6. Yes.
How many members are there for the Malaysian Bar?
14,000. 1-4. Give or take only 50 or 80, that's all. So it's around 14,000 practicing members of the Malaysian Bar.
Actually, as we noticed that until up to date, there have been 3 offences that have been charged in court, so the bar will offer some legal...
Yes, yes, we intend to do that, yes.
Or watching?
Yes, sir. Of course, insofar as time frame is concerned, it's out of my hands. But certainly, you've raised a very good point, and the point being, why is it the police is able to investigate and then put up investigation papers for prosecution in respect of wrongdoing by participants of demonstrators, but when it comes to wrongdoing by law enforcement officials, there is no steps being taken on that front. So you raised a very good question, and I think that the IGP has to answer, and that's something we intend to ask him in the face of such evidence. Yes. Yes. I mean, access to justice is fundamental. So we intend to assist whoever requires our assistance.
Mr. Lee,
Are you surprised that so far the public has been charged but no policeman has been charged?
I am disappointed, most certainly disappointed, that equal vigilance has not been applied on that front.
Mr.
Yes.
Lee, looking at you say good policing in the 4 states.
But bad policing in
Bad
KL.
policing in KL. But looking at the crowd, you see 100,000 of people.
Yeah.
How do they actually do that verbal persuasion?
It can be done. The police, so don't forget, on that day there were 14,000 police personnel. It can be done in each location. But
100,000 is not one place.
yeah, sorry, 100,000 is spread out in various locations of KL. And let us not forget this. I think it's a testament to peace-loving Malaysians and their ability to have rallies and assemblies peacefully, that given what transpired on that day, there were no greater property or bodily injuries. Do have a look at that video clip about what happened in Jalan Tun Perak. And shortly, I'm going to invite the Vice President and Treasurer to touch on that. When volleys of tear gas were fired into the midst of the crowd, ordinarily, there may be a stampede. But that didn't happen. People just peacefully turned around and just slowly walked away from it. And people were helping each other, assisting each other, cutting across race, age, and whatever else there is, rich, poor. So I think that's a testament to Malaysians. Okay, on that front, I'm going to invite VP, yeah, just to touch on that perspective.
Okay, I think it was very clear from the meeting today, from all the members of the bar that was present, that they were very concerned in terms of why was it that compelled the police to have acted in the manner that they did. Was it necessary in the circumstances? Members of the bar, Malaysian Bar, were resoundingly of the view that it was not necessary for the police to have acted in the way they did. Ultimately, all that would have resulted at the end of the day, if the members of the rally or sections of the rally were to succeed in getting to Dataran Merdeka, was merely to sit in Dataran Merdeka. Instead, the police insisted that all of the participants run. They were chased and made to run instead of being allowed to sit. So that was an issue that the Malaysian Bar found incongruous.
Okay, and I just want to read to you the Kesas Highway report, and this very clearly show that nothing has changed so far as police policy in crowd management in KL or Greater KL area is concerned. Kesas Highway incident occurred in 2000. The report came out in 2001. So that's about 10, 11 years ago. I quote from the report, crowd dispersal methods. The police should review the methods of crowd dispersal. Police personnel on duty should be ordered to exercise restraint when dispersing assemblies, especially in the use of canes and batons, tear gas and water cannons. Warnings to disperse should be given loudly and clearly 3 times at 10 minutes intervals. Sufficient time to disperse should be given. The time given should depend on the size of the crowd. The larger the crowd, the longer the time given to enable them to disperse. People who are trying to get away after the warning to disperse has been given should not be chased and or assaulted. Confiscation or destruction of property. Property belonging to members of the public should not be destroyed or confiscated without a justifiable reason. So all these recommendations made by Suhakam have not been complied with in Kuala Lumpur. Lim Chiwi, Lim. Yeah, just call me Chiwi. Yeah.
Dato Rama Shalvan.
Shalvan?
Yeah.
Yes.
In his report said that between 1:40 to 2 p.m. he heard the crowd adjourn, said sampai,
Yeah.
sampai and all,
Yes.
and the police merely smiled.
Yes.
So the police only launched the water cannon and tear gas at 3. So
Yes.
what does Pak Council
Okay.
think about that?
Now, let us then ask this question. Does calling a police Sampa or Anjing justify firing of tear gas and water cannon? Should that be the test? Let us not forget this. The police have the responsibility and the powers and the weapons. Malaysians do not have that. The police are the force to protect and to keep peace in favor or for the benefit of Malaysians. All right? And in any international guidelines for the police force, it is always stated there that the police must exercise great restraint, the highest restraint, and must exercise professionalism. If the Malaysian police force were to have as a matter of policy that the minute that a participant were to jeer them, they are then entitled to unleash non-lethal weapons on the participants, then I think that would make Malaysia certainly a police state. Okay. All right. Okay, you isolate them. Yeah. You can if they were violent, all right, then it justifies the use of tear gas and water cannon. Then you do so, and then you arrest. But you isolate that place. You don't then, because of one problem, one area, 100, 200 meters elsewhere, you start firing tear gas and water cannon. A, without reason, because there was no violent behavior. B, without warning. C, without even engaging them to say, please disperse.
But Chiwi, we are sitting here, we are standing here. It is easy for us to say.
Yes.
But the policemen, they are working. To me, do you think that it is hard for them? Have you consulted any expert? The Bar Council has consulted any expert to say that they are emotionally not disturbed by them?
Okay. All I'm saying, you must read Part B. Part B talks about the 3 instruments. United Nations Code of Conduct, United Nations Basic Principles, Use of Force and Firearms, Amnesty Guidelines. Then you have in there the American, Australian Police Force Guidelines on Crowd Management. You also have, it's not in my final report, but you can look in the Suhakam website. Suhakam inquiries have clearly said they must exercise restraint. So, does it justify the police to use non-lethal weapon just because they are being jeered at? The answer has consistently been no in all these jurisdictions. You are a member of police force, you must exercise restraint because you have the weapons. They don't. So the burden or responsibility lies with you as a member of the police force. And secondly, Suhakam inquiry has also said that so far as police personnel on site is concerned, they cannot be working too long and without food. This is actually in one of the 4 Suhakam reports. And the recommendation is they work in shifts.
Is there any proof or the Bar Council actually assume that they don't have any weapons, the crowd?
Oh, is there in our Annex Tier 1? Yes. So if you look at Annex Tier 1, we have both sides of the story, of the equation. We talked about peaceful participants of the rallies. We also talked about unruly behavior. It is also in our report that along Jalan Tun Perak, the demonstrators engaged in retaliatory behavior by throwing things at the police. But unfortunately, when that happened, the police didn't just exercise restraint. Instead, they then picked up all those things and threw it back at the crowd. Unfortunately, if you're a police officer, that cannot be proper conduct. You cannot do that because the power and responsibility rests with you, and you have to exercise restraint.
How soon can we see engagement? What's the timeline?
I will do so as soon as I possibly can, Yi Liang.
What within a week, within the
I can't commit myself to a time, but rest assured, this is very important since a resolution has been passed by the members of the bar, and I will act expeditious
The
on
bar
this.
is happy with engagement. The bar is happy with engagement. They're not happy with, for example, a judicial review for it.
So far as legal action is concerned, our group of volunteers will certainly be advising the victims as to what to do.
That's it.
Now, Yilang, we are keeping your options open, but for the moment, that's our course of action. And engagement is important. We, the Malaysian Bar, believe in engagement. And to be fair to the Attorney General, to the Inspector General, we've had various meetings with him. But on this occasion, this has gone too far, so far as what happened in KL. We hope he will keep an open mind. And as I've said before, we will extend full cooperation to the authorities.
Your reaction to Ranjit Singh Dylan's statement
Oh.
included tweet?
Two things. First of which is there's been misreporting describing him as a member of the Bar Council. He's not. See, media, please appreciate the distinction. Members of the bar means ordinary members of the bar who can practice law. Bar Council is a 36 membership governing body which governs the Malaysian Bar. So Mr. Ranjit Singh Dylan is not a member of the Bar Council. He's a member of the Malaysian Bar. I looked around for him today, hoping that he'll be here to actually ventilate his views on YouTube here. But unfortunately, he chose not to speak up at the most appropriate forum, being the EJM. So we have been deprived of his view. Sorry, half a second.
Engaging. How is the bar going to engage to this authority? Is it like a dialogue, or will it be like a peaceful walking to the Cameraman?
At the minimum, speaking across the table. At the minimum.
There won't be a lawyer's walk there won't be another lawyer's walk.
I am not discounting that possibility because a member of the bar suggested that, and council has to make a decision on that. Hafiz? Sorry. Okay. Hafiz first.
Any views on the independent commission appointed by the government?
The independent panel? All right. Our views are these. I think first of which, this independent panel lacks any legal framework, as is ordinarily found in Royal Commissions of Inquiry or a Sohakam inquiry. It does not have such features as legal immunity for itself, for any witnesses or other participating persons involved in the proceedings. By immunity, I mean immunity against defamation. All right. Second, and self-incrimination, and the right for not to incriminate yourself. All right. Secondly, it lacks the legal power to subpoena or call for production, subpoena witnesses and call for production of documents. So under these constraints, this panel will be of limited utility. Secondly, it is unfortunate that the chairperson is an individual who, by his two reported comments, namely that. Sorry, I want to make sure I get it right. Bear with me. I've got all these notes. Make sure I get it. The Banama report, namely that some of the participants on 28th of April are communists, members of the who are communists, and he recognized them from his days in the police force. Notwithstanding, there's been a Bangkok Accord in 1989, and I think second of which, what else did he say?
He was asked to comment about the Prime Minister's
Oh
assertion.
yes, that's right. And second of which, he said that this 28th April rally is an attempt to oust the government. So under these circumstances, given his view, I do not think it would be suitable for him to be a member of the panel. It certainly would disqualify him. And further, so far as chairmanship is concerned, even if you accept the panel, we the bar think that the retired Chief Judge of Sabah Sarawak ought to be the more appropriate individual by virtue of his previous office to chair the panel. Okay, sorry. I'm going to go this way if you don't mind. Yes, it's been called for, and we want to renew the bar's campaign for the establishment of the IPCMC. And I think there are enough materials out there already to put forward the argument for the IPCMC. the Tun Zaidin Commission has put forward a very strong argument for it. If there's been a violation of the law on that occasion, then the authorities have to take the necessary action. For example, prosecution, if there's been a violation, because that in itself is a question mark at the moment. Okay, okay. Again, we are talking about a very large area. The breach of the outer perimeter near Dataran or at Dataran Merdeka is one small area. The description of excessive use of force relates to all these areas outside of that. Also, at that location itself also, there was also excessive use of force because they fired tear gas into the crowd way behind that perimeter. And there was no proper engagement to tell the crowd to disperse.
Can I just add, the court order prohibited anybody from assembling on Dataran Merdeka. The police objective that day was very obviously to prevent anybody who wished to assemble on Dataran Merdeka. At the initial firing of the tear gas, you would already have seen that all of the crowd had pushed back, they had turned around and walked away. All the police needed to do thereafter was to re-establish their barrier or their barricade. And then, of course, thereafter, announce to everybody that they must disperse, and then give the crowd sufficient time to disperse. That, I would have thought, would have achieved the police's objective. Instead of continuing to chase down the crowd, even down to Jalan Melayu and further down Jalan Tuanku Rahman.
Returning to your comment on the composition of the independent panel, do you feel that it breaches the rules of natural justice, and what will the bar do about that? What further action will the bar be taking on that?
Oh, we just don't, we don't think it has any legal standing. That's all.
And do you feel it breaches the rules of natural justice?
In terms of?
The composition of the panel and
Oh,
its
no.
chair.
The composition is not so much a breach of natural justice, because natural justice means you must hear both sides. Rather, the composition of the chair, rather the chairman as an individual member of the panel is disqualified by virtue of his views.
Also on the experts.
Okay, we don't intend to participate in any inquiry before the independent panel. We think Sohakam inquiry, going to the AG himself, IGP, should move this forward. And just back to Yi Liang's point, coming back to the composition, surely it would have lent greater weight, if at all, to the composition if they invited one of the UN special rapporteurs for assembly.
You guys have been mentioning that the court order only stops bars of protesters from occupying Dataran areas, yeah? What about the fact that within the Peaceful Assembly Act, which came into force on the Monday before the rally, it actually bars protesters from marching assemblies in motion?
Yes.
So wouldn't these protesters then have breached or broken the
Yes.
law already?
Clara? Yeah. Very interestingly, there were any number of people having to walk, because you cannot have a sit down without walking. And there was plenty of walking in KL, Kuantan, Johor Bahru, Ipoh, and Malacca. So, and the police didn't do anything about the walking.
So what are the findings of the protesters' brutality?
The protesters, what do you mean?
Brutality towards police.
Oh. If you read the Annexure 1, you seem very interested about that. If you read Annexure 1, okay. If you read Annexure 1 and also a resolution, certainly we do not countenance any violent behavior by the protesters. They must exercise responsibility, their right to assemble.
Would you say that the act itself is a catch-22 then?
Which act?
The Peaceful Assembly Act.
If not catch 33, Yi Liang. Yes. Yes. Okay. Okay. Yes. What's the allegation there? How are we biased?
Some say the allegation the Bar Council didn't take a neutral stand
Oh,
on this matter
I see.
because we are not the organizer of Bersih 3.
Right. Oh, if you read Annexure 1, I would like to think that we have been very measured and balanced. We have described conduct on both sides of the event on that day. And we most certainly acknowledge the good policing in those 4 cities. But please, we must find the answer to the simple question, why was there bad policing in KL, and that the police has not learned from the 4 past Sohakam inquiry recommendations. Okay. Yes?
Actually, I have 4 questions for you.
Last
Okay,
4.
but I'll
Become
ask
4.
you privately later anyway.
Very privately.
What would you say about the conduct of the members of the bar during the EGM, where we've received reports that there was some jeering and
All right. In any robust debate, there will be some amount of expression of emotion. But certainly, as chair, we gave ample opportunity to dissenting voices to be fully heard and ventilated.
okay, and also in the past EGM, the resolutions were passed unanimously, but not this time. Is that maybe a significant change in
Regina,
60.
come on, 16 opposition, are you?
Yeah,
You cannot just put aside the minority.
it could be 1,000 plus, but you had
16.
14,000 members
Yes,
of the bar.
that is a reflection of the diversity, Clara, of the bar.
So we're not seeing a sea change.
Huh?
We're not seeing a sea change. We're not seeing cracks in the views in views of the bar.
No, the bar is united and will stand strong as always. Hafiz. Okay. Okay. Thank you to those who want to leave. Dipersilakan. Yeah. Yes. But that's freedom of speech, isn't it? Oh. But then you have to mention people going to the toilet and all that. Yes. Yes, we did. Because they were there for crowd control as part of the organizers. And also, don't forget in the report, they maintained some amount of control. And also, they were picking up rubbish. It's also in the report and the photo. Oh, we don't have any evidence of that from our observation team. Oh, they are exercising their constitutional right, though. Like I said, because in any rallies, people will be talking and making speeches. Yeah. So there's nothing illegal there. It's part of our federal constitution that you can express yourself. Yes.
Today's debate.
Yes.
I'm curious why press is not allowed to view to see the.
Oh, because it's like any general meeting of a body created by statute or company or a registered society, members want to discuss in private amongst themselves. Then now, of course, the office bearers are having a press conference where you can ask us questions. But for the last 60-odd years, we've had any number of annual general meetings and EGMs. It's always been closed. Yes. Members are what? Tweeting away. I know. I have to. That is something we will look into in the near future. After 16 March 2013. There's a very important date.
Next year.
Only members of the bar are allowed to register and enter. So far as an allegation by a particular member of the bar, he is entitled to take whatever appropriate action he feels. But certainly, no one in the house agreed with him that there was no proper registration. No, they have to register, and we will then confirm that he's a member of the bar. Okay. Okay. Thank you all very much. Have a good weekend. Terima kasih.
MalaysiaKini.com.
Malaysia Kini.
For the Malaysia Kini.